May I now request Honorable Arun Shourie to address me.
Distinguished friends, sir, when I sit with all these big people who've been in Parliament 7 times, 5 times, I feel quite diffident. I have never stood for an election. I am not liable to win any election. And I remember that when there was in the last election and the results were out, and then there was the first meeting of the Parliamentary Committee of the BJP, and Advaniji was presiding, and he asked all the new members to introduce themselves. So they will take their name and say, Venkaiah Naidu. And he said, ये भी बतलाना कि कितनी बार आप दूसरी बार आए हो, तीसरी बार आए हो. So everybody would say, so and so, तीसरी बार. Somebody said, so and so, चौथी बार, दूसरी बार. Shatrughan Sinha's time came. He said, sir, Shatrughan Sinha, आखिरी बार. So, I am not even in the category, thanks to Venkaiah, I am not even in the category of the army bars. Shourie has been one of my dearest friends for many, many years. We were together at the Express. And among the colleagues at that time, bonds developed, which have lasted all these years. And among those colleagues, with whom I've had a close relationship, Shourie is probably the one person who is, and my good friend Pushp Saraf here, these are the two persons who had an academic bent and who have kept up their academic work. In the border affairs that Pushp has been editing, in Shourie's earlier book on Parliament, what is Indian Parliament, and now in this new book also, and the third one he's just completing now. So this is a work of a very high order, even from an academic point of view. Mr. Kishore Chandra just told us about its practical usefulness as a guide, but even from an academic point of view, it's a document of record. And I'm here as his friend and also the person who had the opportunity to be in charge of that department which nominally is supposed to be the nodal department for the scheme. I have personally been a beneficiary in the sense that by getting the guidelines changed, I ensured that all the money that I had was not spent at that time. That there was a foolish guideline that you must spend only on one project only 10 lakhs. It was all being frittered away. And I had vowed that I would never touch it till I was allowed to spend all the 6 crore on one project. And therefore we were able to set up a center for biomedical research, for bioengineering in the IIT in Kanpur, and second for environmental sciences. And these are now world-class centers doing extremely good work. So I have been a beneficiary. But at that time and now, I have always believed that this is a scheme that should not be there, unlike Kishore, because I don't have to stand for, not only because I don't have to stand for elections, but I would now use this book of my good friend Shourie to argue that case. Because his last words are, he tells us about the guidelines, how they are being violated routinely, how there is no monitoring, and so on. And he concludes in this way. Often MPs tend to be rather brazen in violating the guidelines. This is the last paragraph I'm reading. So the culmination of the book. He says, it is as if they are throwing a challenge to the government and asking it to do whatever it wants. Now that the government has announced a humongous increase in the annual allocation for the scheme, now it's 5 crores a year, it cannot shirk the responsibility of ensuring strict compliance with the guidelines. Do you think that a government which is tottering and is dependent on the vote of every MP is going to be able to ensure that they abide by any guidelines? As everyone knows, and as successive audit reports establish, non-compliance with guidelines is the starting point of corruption. Therefore, if MPs lack the discipline to conform to the guidelines, MP lads must be scrapped. And he has documented in 287 pages that MPs lack this discipline to abide by the guidelines. Now, sir, so it is a mildly expressed, as Shourie's style, there is mildly expressed conclusion. And I say this that even in spite of the fact that I was a beneficiary of this scheme, and sir, there is no doubt that many MPs, distinguished people sitting here, would have used the money for good purpose. He should have just told us about the relief he was able to give. Others would have used it for excellent purposes. But you know, there is a phrase of Gandhiji that even during the reign of Nero, some good things were done. So that is not the case. It is, Kishore rightly said that our task as legislators is primarily legislation. Now we are not doing that, as you see, every day. Isliye, we are doing at least MP lads and development. This is the Indian solution. We cannot improve the functioning of our regular courts. So we start CAT, we start special courts, and they become like regular courts. See, there is a problem. We ignore the problem. The problem becomes bigger. Well, कुछ तो करना पड़ेगा. Committee बना. Subcommittee बनाती. They then recommend that a new institution should be set up, or a new law should be passed, or a new scheme should be inaugurated. There is no advanced studies. So क्या किया जाए? अब शिवराज के neighborhood में वे institute for advanced studies बना. And 10 years later, the problem is still there and the institution has become a new problem. The same thing with the schemes of this kind. And there's a wonderful lecture of Mr. B.K. Nehru, Shivaji will remember, Mr. Salwa will remember, is the Rajaji Memorial Lecture on a plea for constitutional reform in India. And he made this point that do not go for the wrong remedy because you can't make the existing thing work. You try another remedy, the same disease will affect the other because you have not changed your way of doing things, of running institutions. And he was of the strong view that there should be no perquisites and no privileges at all to members of parliament. So that only those persons would go who genuinely have the interest in and competence for the two functions of parliament, legislation and discussion on issues of national importance and national policies. It was introduced, Shourie informs us rightly, in the Bombay Municipal Corporation. वहाँ से Bombay Assembly, Maharashtra Assembly, वहाँ से Center, and each time that it has been introduced and it has been enlarged, it is done at a time when that government was in a precarious condition. And what has happened really is that Kishore was telling us about committees, but the fact of the matter, Shourie's book shows us, this is a fraternal club, parliament. झगड़ा होता है, उसके बाद कॉफी पीते हैं, मगर इसमें दिखाया गया है कि आप गाइडलाइन है, गाइडलाइन को वायलेट करना, या as I said, we want to change the guideline. The committee of MP lads of both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, after all, consists of MPs. They don't want to offend their fellow MP, so they will always recommend. Very few cases in which they have turned down. So we have mentioned a few of them. Even when there are gross violations of complete fraud, they are sanctioned, they are approved retrospectively. You have given examples of that. Then, even when the gross thing is established, Shourie recounts at great length the committee headed by Mr. Kishore Chandra, whose predecessor in that committee to find and to assess. You see, some MPs were caught on television, on recording by a sting operation, wanting money to sanction works of MP lands. It was clearly established. Of course, the committee was headed by originally, a committee was asked to examine this, headed originally by Mr. Pawan Kumar Bansal. Enforced probity. But anyhow, then Kishore Chandra was made in charge of that committee because Mr. Bansal became a minister. Now, it's such a person who is an embodiment of good things in public life. The punishment, the cases were established after giving them the longest rope, but the punishment which was prescribed was minimal. To such an extent that the Speaker had requested some of those members, please do not attend the House till this report comes. So even that period was counted against the suspension that was decreed by the committee. So you have a situation in which a fraternal club puts its seal on things that are happening. The guidelines have been the only dike which have prevented further perversions of this, and they've had to be, sometimes for very good reason, to be modified from time to time. But the real question is, why should you have this scheme at all? And I'll give you 2 reasons and come to the Supreme Court for 2 minutes. You see, already Shourie documents again and again that the collectors who are supposed to be the implementing agents, they do not have the time for such small projects to supervise a culvert. It's true that a culvert should be built, but instead of energizing, motivating, whipping the bureaucracy to do its job and to be more responsive, what we are wanting is, nahi, main jaakar culvert bana दूंगा. But we expect the collector to monitor कि भी ठीक हुआ है. But he doesn't have the machinery to do so. I'll give you an example, sir. In the Patil sir, when the 9th 5-year plan ki mid-term review thi, I was in charge of the planning commission at that time also as a minister. You know, we asked the collector in Kanpur, how many central schemes are you implementing? He said, I don't know. After 3 months' work, he discovered that there were 143 schemes which he was doing. कहाँ से पैसा आ रहा है, कहाँ से आ रहा है? And now we want to be मेरा 5 लाख का प्रोजेक्ट भी वही मॉनिटर करे. अगर कॉन्ट्रैक्टर ने खराबी की तो भी कलेक्टर ने क्यों नहीं उसको ठीक किया? So he doesn't have the time. So therefore, what is our solution? Our solution is we now set up monitoring committees for each state. And Shourie shows on page 236, many of these states have not even set up the committee. So many years after. And in many of them, number of committee meetings in 2008, 2009, Assam 0, Bihar 0, Goa 0, Kerala 1 meeting, Madhya Pradesh 0, Maharashtra 1, Meghalaya, Nagaland, Rajasthan, Sikkim, Andaman Nicobar's मीटिंग ही नहीं हुई. मगर किया क्या साहब, हमने कमेटी बना दी, मॉनिटरिंग कमेटी बना दी. And you therefore see the CAG reporting, and it is really one chapter that everybody must read. And I sincerely appeal to these big people, please persuade members of parliament to read chapter 12 of Shourie's book, in which he summarizes the findings of the CAG. CAG की हर एक और दूसरी रिपोर्ट पर हंगामा होगा पार्लियामेंट में. CAG की रिपोर्ट्स MP लैड पर 3 है, एक बार भी डिस्कस नहीं हुआ, कुछ कहा नहीं. And he has said that to give you one small thing on this question of violations, he gives you fraud, violation, he lists so many things. And then as far as monitoring is concerned, he says the facts regarding the careless approach to monitoring mechanism and more so to the routine reply indicated by the government. This routine reply of the government indicated lack of governance at both the center and the state levels. And then he shows that the auditors noted, then in 2009 there was the 3rd report, and the auditors reported that the ministry took 8 years to send the final action taken report on the CAG's report of 2012. As per this ATN, the ministry sent out instruction. अच्छा उन्होंने किया क्या? कहते हैं हमने instruction भेज दी, एक और circular भेज दिया था कि इसको ठीक implement करो. So we continue with these frauds. And he said on the attitude, I'll take 1 second only more, sir. Attitude of the executive to all this is displayed by this action taken reports of 8 years, and no legislator objected also. And now comes the Supreme Court. Just now Kishore was saying, and Surya points out, that this matter was before a 5-judge bench. And on the narrow point that they should be, whether it violates the separation of powers, only on that point they sanctioned this thing. After there are other challenges, Article 14, because no doubt, as Kishore just now explained to us, if I have now 25 crores to spend during my tenure in the Lok Sabha, then I get a march over my rival for the next election. But the Supreme Court did not even consider that. And the 5-judge bench was headed by that other paragon of probity, Justice Balakrishna. And you just see what they said. Surya quotes them. In view of what the CAG has said, what Surya has summarized, the Supreme Court said the court dismissed the charge that the funds meant for the scheme were being misused. अरे वो सारी audit reports क्या कह रही हैं? वो कहता है कि it also found no merit in the allegation that the scheme was not being monitored properly. When the committees are not meeting, but such is the real problem. And that is it is in that sense that I would like to conclude that we must look at these things with a harsher eye. Because the decision to improve these things rests in hands that are the beneficiaries of the perversions. This is our general problem in India today. MP lads in that sense is a symptom of the general problem in India, and I will end with that. What we have in our electoral system is not the way to select rulers for 1 billion people. But the decision to change it is in the hands of those who will be the first to be dislocated if the system were changed. And therefore we continue from one day to the other. And it is in that spirit that Surya's work transcends the mere question of MP lads, and I congratulate him for the diligent work that he has done, which he always does, and I congratulate my very dear friend Kapish Mehra of Rupa for an excellently brought out publication. Even with the sub-editors, I could not find a mistake. Thank you so very much.